Welcome to Boxing During Dinner. Armando Alvarez, Victor Bermudez, David Barry. And we're going to recap what was this weekend in boxing, especially Saturday night. Wow. I mean, I'm wearing the Lomachenko shirt right here. He is back. And yes, I'm a little biased when it comes to Lomachenko. I love a skillful fighter. I mean, he's one of the best, lost to Teofimo Lopez in his fight previous to the one with Nakatani. But he came out, Victor, and he was the goods. He was the Lomachenko we all know and love. He came in, dominated, knocked out Nakatani. Was such an impressive win, and he showed that he's ready to jump back in there with Teofimo or with any of the guys at 135 and 130.
He looks so good that I totally understand why Teofimo decided or was vocal about it early on after their first fight, saying he wasn't giving Lomachenko a rematch. I know his father came out afterwards saying, I'll talk to my son, but he looked, if this is the Lomachenko we're going to get at that weight class, I would worry if I was the rest of the division. I would choose Lomachenko to win a rematch with Teofimo Lopez if that's the way he's going to start.
I think so too.
If he doesn't, look, I think he would have beat Teofimo if he didn't take so long to get going. We didn't see that this past weekend. We saw him. It's what we love about boxing. He brings that sweet science, that cliche that you talk about. He brings it all. He has the goods to deliver on everything he promises. The foot movement, the placement of punches, the way he breaks you down. It's just, he's a problem. I don't expect Teofimo to stay at 135 after the George Kambosos fight. I think he eludes Lomachenko and moves up to 140. He should, because I don't think what Lomachenko possesses carries over to 140 because he's just a smaller frame guy. I'd like him to stay at 135, maybe even move back down to 130, but he is a problem where he's at for anyone and everyone. And I would avoid Lomachenko. I would just avoid him altogether because if he wants to, he can clean up that division.
David, he's a guy that went 375-1 as an amateur. That's one loss, and he avenged it, right? He lost to Salido early on in his career, came back, and we all know what he did. Once he lost to Teofimo Lopez, and going into this Saturday's fight, and we have a chat that we have on WhatsApp, and I mentioned that I'm like, he's going to come out to prove something. He's going to come out to kill. And he did. I mean, he came out and he had a purpose behind his performance, right? And I think one of the things is he doesn't like to lose very much.
No.
Or at all.
No, and that's part of the reason he's still at 135, right? Like everybody around him from top rank to his manager and on down is telling him 130 is a better weight class for you. And it is a better weight class for him, and he doesn't care. He's got an ego the size of another planet, but that's what makes great fighters great. And Lomachenko, and we've talked a lot about bias on this show. Like I said, no one's writing a check to us, so we can be as biased as we want until that comes and happens. Is Lomachenko exactly? Lomachenko is perhaps my favorite fighter in all of boxing, but I was rubbed the wrong way by the volume of excuses that were approaching Deontay Wilder level at one point. The only way that he could have made those almost acceptable was to perform the way that he did. And I don't think that you can be critical of his performance at any stretch. From the start, he wasn't landing all of the punches of consequence, but like the offense was there. The intent to break things down was there. It was just masterful. It's the type of performance that might make Teofimo Lopez stay at 135 just a hair longer to fight him. Although I'm with Victor, I think the smart thing to do is move on and fight somebody at 140 and avoid Lomachenko because you did beat him. Now, yes, the people talk about, oh, well, if that Lomachenko fought Teofimo Lopez the first time around, it would have been a different fight. Well, yeah, but at the same time, Teofimo Lopez offers something different on the other side of the ring than Nakatani. I think it's a pretty even fight still, but based on the performance that I just saw, I think that Lomachenko has more tools than Teofimo Lopez, but I also don't think Teofimo Lopez is going to turn in a dud against him. I think it's going to be a fight the second time around if those guys turn it in. And I'm with Victor on this one. I've got Lomachenko by just enough more to pull it out a second time if it happens. And frankly, the way that fight played out is all of the promotion that you could have wanted, because there are no other real options at 135 for Lopez under the Top Rank banner. With all respect to George Kambosos, who's a hell of a fighter, he doesn't have the tools that these other guys do. Lomachenko is probably the best fight for him at 135 and the best money fight available for him in all of boxing.
And one guy that did go up to 140 and won a belt over the weekend was Gervonta Tank Davis. Leonard Ellerby came out yesterday and he's like, oh, I know it wasn't his best performance. Dude, it was a hell of a performance. I mean, what the hell are you talking about? Really quick. I mean, I'm so annoyed by the each fighter should be perfect. And I know we went through a list yesterday in our chat. It's like, Ali lost to Ken Norton. So who cares? Like, nobody was that like, oh, I'm so sorry for Ali's, he'll be back. No, dude, he goes out and wins the rematch and the rubber match. So who cares? But Tank Davis, he's a killer, man. He's a killer. He came out, was in a tough fight with Barrios, but Mario Barrios is a tall guy. He knows how to box. He landed some good shots, made it a really good fight. But eventually that Tank power got to him. And Tank Davis proved that he's one of the top attractions in all of boxing. I mean, Atlanta was buzzing. And two, that he's one of the top fighters in all of boxing. If you didn't have him in your top 10 pound for pound before this fight, now you do.
Dude, he is, you mentioned it. Outside of Canelo Alvarez, I think he's the biggest attraction in boxing. There's a lot of tough fighters. There's a lot of guys that they're tough and it's real good fighters. There's Terrence Crawford. I mean, we can go down the list. Just look at the pound for pound list. None of them are attractions like Gervonta. Terrence Crawford can't sell in Omaha, Nebraska, which is his hometown. Delfimo Lopez just had a fight canceled in Miami because ticket sales were bad. I don't care what they want to say, all the excuses they want to throw around. I think it's ticket sales. It is what it is. My opinion. We're not getting checked by anyone, so whatever. We've seen it. Look, Anthony Joshua can sell out stadiums in London. Tyson Fury can do the same. Yeah, why don't you try to do that over here in the States? Outside of Canelo Alvarez, the biggest attraction in the sport right now is Gervonta Davis, and boxing needs that.
Yep.
Whether it's and he's promoted by the right guys, they get who they're. Look, Floyd Mayweather went through this with Top Rank. Said, "Sell me to the urban community." No one, the pretty boy Floyd just wasn't selling. Leonard Ellerby, Floyd Mayweather, they know what they're doing. Showtime knows what they have, and it's, dude, sellout crowd in Atlanta, State Farm Arena. What he did with Yurioki Gamboa, anywhere you put this man, he sells out. He's the biggest draw in boxing outside of Canelo Alvarez.
And David, so many interesting fights to be made with Gervonta Davis. And, something that Mayweather said after the fight, which rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, including probably all of us, is that he said, oh, we have plenty of guys he could fight with PBC and Mayweather Promotions. I want to see him fight everybody. I want to see him fight Ryan Garcia, Lomachenko, Teofimo Lopez, because that's what's going to make him from an attraction and maybe a top 10 pound for pound to the it guy in all of boxing. He needs these fights.
Yeah, I agree. But interestingly enough, I mean, I think this is going to end up working out in his favor more than it would for like a lot of top rank guys, for example, for the reason that Victor just said. He is a monster draw between three weight classes right now. He has the power to compete in all three of them. So I think what you're going to see happen is, and I don't know where he'll fight next, but there are options. There are some good free agents in the sport who could fight him. Mikey Garcia, for example, is a free agent with enough name cachet. I think they keep him away from Regis Prograis. You could also, a fight that you heard about potentially happening in Baltimore or somewhere around the DC area a while back was a Gary Russell Jr. fight, which you might see at a 30 or 35.
He's still fighting?
Well, once a year. So you're going to have to wait till next year. And then that'll be, or
twice. Groundhog Day.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not holding back today, boys.
Tony Phil sees his shadow, then we'll find out. But I think
15 more years of no Gary Russell.
Yes, exactly. Or one of I think combined all of the brothers fight as much as one active fighter, but we'll put a pin in that for another day. Yeah. But I think, there's Adrian Broners who may not happen because of the relationships. My point is that there are names and guys who in the next 18 to 24 months might sort of free themselves up from contractual obligations anyway, and let some of those guys fight each other, thin the herd a little bit, and create an opponent with a higher profile for Tank Davis. then I think you can have your crossovers. Let's say it is one of the guys at Golden Boy, right? Then all of a sudden, you see the bigger fights get made between promoters, and I think it becomes more viable when there's more money on the table. So I think it's frustrating. It's not what people want to hear, but I think there's enough fights to sort of satiate the public's wishes for the next 18 to 24 months while the lightweight division sort of plays itself out. But Tank Davis is unavoidable. And I think he is, to Victor's point, the biggest attraction at that weight class. And not to belabor this conversation too much, we're talking about him as an attraction, but the person that Victor's comparing him to also, I think, has the style most comparable to him. Who but Canelo Alvarez fights in a way with a crude step forward efficiency, lower volume, monstrous power at all times. It's Tank Davis. Those guys have a style that's really appealing, and that in any moment that fight can be over. And that's what happened in the 11th round on Saturday. You saw a star be born.
And before we go, we mentioned some weeks ago we'd be giving grades out to the lightweights, or the guys around the lightweight division, Tank Davis and Lomachenko included. I'll start. I give them both A+. I think Lomachenko for his dominance, and Tank for showing he's a world-class fighter. He was in a tough fight with Mario Barrios, but to show what he did in the championship rounds, kudos to him, man.
Mm-hmm. And the best version of Mario Barrios showed up that night too. Let's not downplay that, right? Yes, forget the belts for a second. It was a secondary title. I think we all know how we feel about the titles, but Mario Barrios is a legit contender at 140 pounds, a deep weight class as it is. And he fought like a guy who probably is near the top 5 of that weight class. So I'm going to agree. I think both of those guys deserve A's or better. And this is, a banner weekend for boxing. This is why we stick around for this sport. These guys were awesome.
Victor?
Make it quick. Lomachenko gets an A+, and I give Tank Davis, Gervonta Davis, an A-. I love what he did offensively. I love the fact that his defense, he keeps both hands up. Love that about him, but I think too many jabs still slip in there. The fight was a bit closer than I anticipated. Kudos to Barrios. That's the reason for the A-. He finished it the way he should have, but the fact that Floyd Mayweather needs to come over and tell him, hey, you're on the unofficial scorecard. This is you're down. It's closer than I anticipated. That's the reason for the A-, and I'm just being a hater, I guess, because he could easily get an A+.
It's a fair point, but at that level of the sport, that's the difference between elite and a step below. And I
need to point out, his defense is getting much better. I mean, it's just too many punches slip in, but he takes care of business at the end of the day. His knockout win streak is just super impressive, but just still gets caught with way too much, especially for who he keeps in camp. Like, Floyd needs to work on that, because Floyd never got touched. But Tank is a star, man. Like, and
definitely is.
Going back to something that David and I were speaking about on social media this past weekend, there's no 50-50 split here. I don't care how many titles you hold. That man is, I would not do anything less than 60-40. Davis, that is the A side. That is whatever money he wants, whatever he wants to negotiate. He comes second to none, man. All these guys with titles at 135 and 140, I don't give a damn. You can't sell out in your hometown. Whatever Tank wants, he gets, because he is the biggest draw outside of Canelo.
Well, if Triller would offer Teofimo $6 million, then they would offer Tank, what, 15 or 20?
throw the bag full of money at him.
Yeah, and it's a guaranteed sellout.
Couple of quick parting shots. Gabe Rosado last week, one of the knockouts of the year. David Morrell last night says, "Hold my beer." And so that's one. And you know what? Just thinking of that David Morrell knockout, I just need to close with that. Forget the second parting shot. David Morrell, talk about selling a crowd in Minneapolis. Tony Oliva from the Minnesota Twins, Cuban legend, there to see him knock the hell out of Mario Cáceres, who beat Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Maybe Anderson Silva against Morrell next.
Oh, geez.
Who knows? But you know what? I would love to see him against Edgar Berlanga. There you go.
Fair enough.
Wait, you mean to tell me there was a sellout crowd in Atlanta and one in Minnesota, but boxing's dead?
But boxing's dead.
Interesting.
Boxing's dead.
Touche, sir. Touche.